The massive alien ship appeared over Earth like a dark storm cloud, its strange crystal surface glowing with threatening lights. The ship was enormous, bigger than any city, and it floated silently in space above the planet. On other worlds across the galaxy, ships just like this one had brought nothing but destruction and fear. Inside the alien vessel, Admiral Kaivel stood tall on 4 powerful arms, watching Earth through his ship's main screen. His skin was gray and rough like old leather, and his eyes glowed with a cold blue light. He had destroyed many planets before, and Earth would be no different. Behind him, his second-in-command, Commander Raunon, worked at a control panel covered in blinking lights. "Start the surrender message," Kaivel ordered in his deep, rumbling voice. He had given this same command on hundreds of worlds, and it always worked the same way. The primitive beings below would panic, their leaders would beg, and then they would submit to the mighty Thraxi Empire. The alien transmission broke into every television, radio, and computer screen on Earth at exactly the same moment. People in their homes, at work, and on the streets suddenly saw the terrifying figure of Admiral Kaivel fill their screens. His 4 arms were crossed, and his glowing eyes stared directly at them as if he could see into their souls. "Weak humans of the 3rd planet," the alien spoke in perfect English, though his voice sounded like it came from a machine. "You have exactly 72 hours to surrender completely to the Thraxi Empire. If you obey us, we will kill you quickly. If you fight back, you will suffer like the people of the Andorian colonies did." In the presidential palace in Seoul, South Korea, President Lee Dong-ho sat in his emergency meeting room with his most important advisors. The room was filled with large screens showing news from around the world, military reports, and confused messages from other world leaders. Defense Minister Park Ji-woo, a stern man with gray hair, stared at the military displays showing their weapons, which suddenly seemed very small compared to the alien ship above. "What do we know about their technology?" asked Foreign Minister Kim Han-ah, a smart woman who had spent years dealing with difficult international problems. But nothing in her experience had prepared her for this moment. "Our satellites show the ship is 3 kilometers long," reported Park Ji-woo grimly. "Their energy readings are off our scales. We have never seen anything like it." President Lee felt the weight of 6 billion lives on his shoulders. As the leader of one of the world's most advanced nations, other countries would look to South Korea for guidance. But what could any human government do against aliens who had conquered entire star systems? "Sir," whispered his young aide Choi Min-ho, leaning close to the president's ear. "You need to see what is happening on the internet." President Lee turned to look at the screens showing social media feeds from around the world. What he saw made him blink in surprise and wonder if he was seeing things correctly. Instead of the panic and terror he expected, the internet was exploding with something completely different. People were not screaming or crying or running in fear. They were laughing. Within just 15 minutes of the alien broadcast, someone had already created a funny picture of Admiral Kaivel with the words, "I want to speak to Earth's manager," written below it. The image was being shared thousands of times every second. On Twitter, a user named Space Meme Queen had posted, "Aliens travel across the galaxy just to give us a 72-hour deadline? Even my pizza delivery is faster than that." Another person had created a video where they acted out the alien speech but spoke in a silly high-pitched voice while wearing a cardboard box on their head with toilet paper rolls taped to it for extra arms. In Tokyo, a popular comedian had already filmed himself copying the alien's threatening pose, but he was wearing a kitchen apron and holding cooking utensils instead of alien weapons. The video had gotten 2 million views in 20 minutes. "Look at this," Choi Min-ho said, pointing to his tablet screen. "Someone has already made a song remix of the alien speech. It is the #1 trending topic worldwide." President Lee watched in amazement as the alien's scary ultimatum was turned into a dance beat. Young people were already posting videos of themselves dancing to the alien surrender song, in their bedrooms, offices, and even on busy street corners. Foreign Minister Kim Han-ah leaned over to look at the screen. "Is that person wearing a colander on their head?" "I think they are pretending to be the alien," Choi Min-ho explained. "The colander is supposed to be an alien helmet." On the alien ship high above Earth, Commander Raunon was monitoring all of Earth's communications as he always did when they conquered a new world. Usually he would report back about desperate military preparations, crying leaders, and populations fleeing in terror. But today was different. "Admiral," Raunon called out, his voice confused. "The humans they're doing something strange." "Define strange," Admiral Kaivel replied without turning around. He was studying Earth's military capabilities, which seemed pathetically weak. "They appear to be making fun of us, sir." Admiral Kaivel spun around on his four arms, his glowing eyes narrowing. In all his centuries of conquest, no species had ever responded to the Thraxi ultimatum with anything but fear and submission. "Show me," he commanded. The display screen filled with images from Earth's internet. Thousands of humans were creating funny pictures, videos, and songs about the Thraxi Empire. They were not afraid. They were laughing. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kaivel felt something he had never experienced before: confusion. 24 hours had passed since the alien ultimatum, and Earth should have been in complete chaos. Admiral Kaivel expected to see desperate military preparations, panicked governments, and crying populations begging for mercy. Instead, what he saw on the communication screens made him question everything he thought he knew about conquest. Commander Ralnon stood at his monitoring station, staring at the flood of human communications with wide, confused eyes. His job was simple: watch the primitive species panic and prepare their surrender documents. But the humans were doing something that had never happened before in the long history of the Thraxi Empire. "Admiral," Ralnon called out, his voice uncertain. "You really need to look at this." Admiral Kaivel walked over on his four strong arms, expecting to see the usual reports of military movements and emergency government meetings. Instead, the main display screen showed something that made his glowing blue eyes narrow in confusion. The humans had taken his terrifying surrender demand and turned it into music. Someone had used computer software to change his deep, threatening voice into a catchy song with a dancing beat. The video showed his own image bobbing up and down to the rhythm while colorful lights flashed around him. At the bottom of the screen he could see it had been watched 50 million times. "What is this?" Kaivel asked, pointing one of his forearms at the screen. "They call it a remix, sir," Ralnon explained nervously. "They have taken your speech and made it into entertainment." But that was not all. Across the planet, humans were copying the aliens' threatening poses, but they were not doing it out of fear. They were making fun of him. People wore cardboard boxes painted gray to look like alien armor. They taped kitchen colanders to their heads as pretend helmets. Some used pool noodles, those long foam toys children played with in swimming pools, and taped them to their bodies to create extra arms like the aliens had. In Tokyo, Japan, a comedian named Yamada Hiroshi had become famous overnight. He had recorded himself acting exactly like Admiral Kaivel, copying his voice and movements perfectly, but he made everything silly and funny instead of scary. He wore a gray bathrobe and had tied pool noodles to his arms. When he crossed his four fake arms and tried to look threatening, people laughed so hard they cried. His video had gained 10 million followers in just one day. "Greetings, primitive humans," Yamada said in his video, copying the alien's serious tone but speaking in Japanese. "I am Admiral Kaivel, and I demand you surrender your snacks to me immediately. Especially your chocolate. We have traveled across the galaxy because we heard about your chocolate." The video had been translated into dozens of languages and was being shared everywhere. People in offices, schools, and homes were watching it and laughing together instead of being afraid. In London, England, the BBC's late-night television host was treating the alien invasion like a movie review. He sat at his desk wearing a serious expression and spoke directly to the camera. "Well, folks, we have had alien invasions in movies for decades, and I have to say these new aliens are really disappointing," the host said, shaking his head sadly. "First of all, they give us 72 hours notice? What kind of invasion is that? Even my dentist only gives me 24 hours to reschedule. And the threatening speech? Please. I have seen scarier faces on my morning cereal box." The audience in the television studio laughed and clapped. The host continued his review, giving the aliens a score of 2 out of 10 stars for their amateur hour intimidation tactics, and suggesting they go back to alien school and learn how to properly terrify a planet. Back in Seoul, South Korea, social media manager Young So-min sat at her computer surrounded by multiple screens, all showing different websites and social media platforms. She worked for the government's communications department, and her job was to monitor how people were responding to the crisis. But she had never seen anything like this before. "Lee Tae-ho," she called to her supervisor, "you have to see these numbers." Lee Tae-ho walked over to her desk, expecting to hear about panic and chaos spreading online. Instead, Young So-min showed him something incredible. "The hashtag #AlienKaren has become the most popular topic in the entire world," she said, pointing to her screen. "People are saying the alien admiral acts like a demanding customer who wants to speak to Earth's manager." She clicked on another window. "Look at this video compilation." Someone collected clips of the alien's speech and edited them to make it look like he is complaining about bad customer service. They added background music from shopping mall advertisements. The video showed Admiral Kyvel's serious face with text added that read, "When you travel 500 light-years to conquer a planet but they don't have your favorite parking spot available." "How many people have seen this?" Lee Tae-ho asked. 200 million and counting, Young So-min replied. And it was only posted 3 hours ago. Meanwhile, children around the world were drawing pictures of the aliens with crayons and markers. One particular drawing had gone viral on social media. It showed Admiral Kyvel, drawn in simple stick figure style by an 8-year-old girl from Canada. In the picture, the alien admiral was slipping and falling on a banana peel, his 4 arms waving in the air, with a big smile on his face and stars spinning around his head. The child had written in messy handwriting at the bottom, "Silly alien man falls down like my daddy when he steps on my toys." On the alien ship, Admiral Kyvel stared at the child's drawing on his main display screen. For the first time in his long military career, something strange was happening in his chest. The feeling was unfamiliar and uncomfortable. His confidence, which had carried him through 1,000 successful conquests, began to shake like a building in an earthquake. "Sir," Commander Raunon said carefully, "perhaps we should attack sooner than planned?" "No," Admiral Kyvel growled, but his voice did not sound as certain as before. "They will learn to fear us." But deep inside he was beginning to wonder if that was really true. With only 24 hours left until the deadline, Admiral Kyvel decided that the humans needed to see real power. These primitive creatures were clearly too stupid to understand the danger they were in. A proper demonstration of Thraxi military might would surely make them stop their foolish laughing and start begging for mercy like every other species in the galaxy. "Prepare the demonstration weapons," Kyvel commanded from his position on the bridge of the massive ship. His 4 arms moved with practiced authority as he activated the holographic display showing Earth and its surrounding space. Commander Raunon input the targeting coordinates into the ship's weapon systems. Targets acquired, Admiral. Beginning demonstration sequence. The first target was an old space station that humans had abandoned years ago in Earth's outer orbit. It was perfect for showing the aliens' power without actually killing anyone yet. The Thraxi weapon beam shot out like a lance of pure energy, and in less than 3 seconds, the entire space station disappeared in a brilliant flash of light. Where there had once been metal and machinery, now there was only empty space and glowing particles. Admiral Kyvel nodded with satisfaction. "Excellent. Now target those asteroids near the moon." 3 large space rocks, each the size of a mountain, became the next demonstration. The alien weapons fired again, and the asteroids simply turned to dust, creating beautiful clouds of sparkling debris that drifted slowly through space like cosmic snow. "And now," Kyvel said with growing confidence, "project the death skulls above their major cities. Let them see the face of their doom." Across Earth, massive holographic images appeared in the sky above capitals like New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, and Seoul. The skulls were enormous, each one the size of a city block, glowing with red fire and staring down at the humans with empty eye sockets. The images were designed to inspire absolute terror and had worked perfectly on hundreds of other worlds. Admiral Kyvel stood proudly on his bridge, waiting for the reports of mass panic, crying leaders, and surrender documents to start flooding in. This was always his favorite part of conquest, the moment when a proud species finally understood how small and helpless they really were. "Sir," Commander Raunon called out after several minutes, his voice sounding strange. "I am receiving the human response to our demonstration." "Excellent," Kyvel replied, not bothering to turn around. "Read me their surrender terms." But when Raunon did not respond immediately, Admiral Kyvel spun around to look at his second-in-command. What he saw made his glowing blue eyes widen in shock. Commander Raunon's gray alien face had turned pale, and his mouth was hanging open as he stared at his communication screens. "What is it?" Kyvel demanded. "What are they saying?" "Sir," Raunon said slowly, they are making fun of our demonstration." Admiral Kyvel rushed to the communication station and looked at the screens showing Earth's internet activity. What he saw made his 4 arms start to shake with anger and confusion. In New York City, a street artist named Oh Jin-woo was already painting a huge mural on the side of a building. The painting showed the space station explosion, but he had added pink and blue colors to the debris, making it look like one of those parties humans had when they wanted to announce if their baby would be a boy or a girl. The title of the mural, painted in large bold letters, read, "Worst Gender Reveal Party Ever." Crowds of people were gathering around the mural, taking pictures and laughing. Someone had posted a video online with a woman's voice saying, "Congratulations. It's a completely vaporized space station. But that was not the worst part. The asteroid destruction had been even more humiliating. A famous celebrity chef named Wang Sujin had somehow gotten video footage of the aliens destroying the space rocks and had edited it into her cooking show. In the video, Chef Wang stood in her kitchen wearing her usual bright apron and smiled at the camera. "Today we are going to learn about proper space rock preparation," she said cheerfully. "As you can see, our alien friends have demonstrated the correct technique for tenderizing asteroids. Notice how they apply just the right amount of energy to create that perfect cosmic dust texture. This is exactly what you want when preparing your space rocks at home." The video had been watched 20 million times in 2 hours. People were sharing it with comments like, "Finally, a cooking show that teaches practical skills." And, "I always wondered how to properly season my asteroids." The holographic skulls had received the most insulting treatment of all. Within just 1 hour of their appearance, humans had used computer software to edit the scary skulls into completely different images. One popular video showed the skull participating in a romantic movie scene, with soft music playing while the skull appeared to be giving flowers to a human woman who was laughing. Another video had turned the skull into a fitness instructor with text added that made it look like the skull was saying, "Feel the burn, humanity. Those are your calories being destroyed." In Seoul, a young computer programmer named Park Hyun-woo had created a smartphone app that allowed people to rate the aliens' light show like judges at the Olympics. Users could score the demonstration on creativity, style, and entertainment value. The results were being broadcast live on television by news anchor Kim Young-soo, who reported the ratings with the same serious tone he used for real news. "The current average rating for the alien demonstration is 3.2 out of 10, Kim announced to his television audience. Critics are saying the performance lacked creativity and relied too heavily on tired, death skull imagery that has been overused in science fiction movies. Many viewers also complained that the explosions, while technically impressive, showed poor artistic vision." In the city of Busan, university students led by a young woman named Shin Yi-jin had organized something called a flash mob. Hundreds of students gathered in the city center and began copying the threatening gestures they had seen the aliens make, but they did it while laughing and dancing to popular music. The students crossed their arms like Admiral Kaivel did, made serious faces and pointed dramatically at the sky. But instead of looking scary, they looked like they were having the most fun they had ever had in their lives. The video of their performance was shared millions of times across all 6 continents. Admiral Kaivel watched all of this on his screens, his 4 hands trembling with an emotion he had never felt before. For the first time in his centuries of military service, his most feared weapons and most terrifying displays had been turned into human entertainment. He had expected screams of terror. Instead, he got comedy reviews and cooking shows. The final day had arrived, and something was happening that had never occurred before in the long history of the galaxy. On worlds scattered across distant star systems, alien species were doing something they had not done in hundreds of years. They were watching Earth's internet and learning that it was possible to laugh at the mighty Thraxi Empire. On the planet Veltar, millions of light-years away from Earth, the local communication centers were working harder than they had ever worked before. The Veltari people, who looked like tall blue creatures with 6 legs, had been slaves to the Thraxi Empire for over 200 years. Their planet had been conquered when their grandparents were young, and they had lived in fear ever since. But now, young Veltari were secretly downloading videos from something called Earth's Internet. They gathered in hidden groups to watch humans making jokes about Admiral Kaivel. For the first time in their lives, they saw their terrifying conquerors being treated like a joke instead of like gods of war. "Look at this one," whispered a young Veltari named Zefali to his friends, showing them a video on a hidden communication device. The video showed a human child wearing a cardboard box painted gray, pretending to be Admiral Kaivel, but the child kept tripping over his own feet and falling down while trying to look scary. The Veltari had never seen anything so wonderful. They had never imagined that the admiral who had destroyed their cities and enslaved their people could look so silly and powerless. Some of the younger Veltari began making strange noises with their mouths, sounds their translators called laughter. The same thing was happening on dozens of other worlds. The Keth Mori, who were small furry creatures from the ice planet Keth, were sharing human memes in their underground tunnels. The Nal Doke, tall thin beings from a desert world, were learning human jokes and telling them to each other in secret meetings. Even more shocking, young Thraxi soldiers on various ships throughout the galaxy were secretly watching Earth's videos. These gray-skinned, four-armed warriors had been raised from birth to believe that fear and conquest were the only ways to live. But now they were experiencing something their species had never known before, the joy of laughing. On the Thraxi flagship orbiting Earth, junior officers were trying very hard to do their jobs, but they kept making strange faces. Their mouths would twitch, their eyes would water, and their breathing would become irregular. The ship's medical computers could not understand what was happening to them. Medical report on the crew? Admiral Kaivel asked his chief medical officer. Sir, the symptoms are spreading throughout the ship, the medical officer reported nervously. The crew is experiencing involuntary facial muscle spasms, irregular breathing patterns, and what our computers are calling pleasure responses to human communication signals. What the medical computers did not understand was that the Thraxi crew was trying not to laugh. Every time someone mentioned the human videos, the alien soldiers would remember funny scenes and have to fight to keep their faces serious. Meanwhile, on Earth, something incredible was happening in the presidential office in Seoul. President Lee Dong-ho sat at his desk, surrounded by his advisors, preparing for what everyone thought would be humanity's last day. The alien deadline was only hours away, and no one expected to survive. Communications Director Han Mi-young burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement and disbelief. She carried a tablet computer that was making beeping sounds as new messages arrived constantly. Sir, she said, breathing hard as if she had been running. We are receiving messages from other alien species. They are contacting us from all across the galaxy. President Lee looked up from the papers he was reading. What kind of messages? They are thanking us, sir, Han Mi-young said, her voice full of wonder. Dozens of different alien civilizations are sending us thank you messages. They say they have been watching our internet and they want to tell us that we are heroes. She handed him the tablet, and President Lee read the translated messages with growing amazement. The first message was from the Veltari. Brave humans of Earth, for 200 years we have lived in fear of the Thraxi. Today you have shown us that our oppressors are not gods. They are just bullies who can be laughed at. Thank you for teaching us courage through comedy. Another message came from the Kethmori, small warm beings of the third planet. Your jokes have traveled across the galaxy and brought light to our frozen world. We had forgotten how to be happy until we saw your videos. Our children are laughing for the first time in their lives. The messages kept coming. Species after species that had been conquered and enslaved by the Thraxi Empire were writing to thank humanity for showing them that their conquerors could be mocked and ridiculed instead of feared. Back on the Thraxi flagship, Admiral Kaivel was facing the worst crisis of his military career. For the first time in 300 years of service, his own officers were questioning his orders. Commander Ralnon approached his superior's command chair very carefully. Unknown to Admiral Kaivel, Ralnon had been secretly watching human comedy videos for the past 2 days and had subscribed to several Earth entertainment channels. He found himself looking forward to new videos more than he looked forward to conquering planets. Admiral, Ralnon said quietly, the crew's morale is compromised. Perhaps we should consider a different approach to this conquest. Silence. Admiral Kaivel roared, spinning around with all 4 arms raised in anger. But even as he shouted, Kaivel remembered a video he had accidentally seen earlier that day. It showed a small Earth creature called a cat, wearing a cardboard costume that was supposed to look like Thraxi armor. The cat had walked into a glass door while wearing the costume and had fallen backward onto a soft cushion. For just a moment, Admiral Kaivel's mouth had twitched upward before he caught himself. Around the galaxy, on world after world, the same thing was happening. The Thraxi Empire's reign of terror was crumbling not because of weapons or armies, but because people were learning to laugh at what had once scared them. As Earth's deadline approached, the galaxy held its breath. But for the first time in centuries of Thraxi rule, their victims were not trembling in fear. They were watching and waiting to see what the humans would do next, and some of them were even smiling. The clock struck exactly 12 o'clock in the afternoon, Greenwich Mean Time. 72 hours had passed since Admiral Kaivel had given humanity his ultimatum to surrender or die. Around the world, people stopped what they were doing and looked at their watches, phones, and clocks. The deadline had arrived. But instead of sending surrender documents or preparing for war, Earth did something that no species in galactic history had ever done before. Every major city on the planet participated in the same silly event at exactly the same moment. In New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, and hundreds of other cities, people gathered in public squares, parks, and streets to play something they called Alien Invasion Bingo. They held printed cards with squares containing predictions about typical alien behavior that humans had seen in movies and television shows for decades. The bingo cards included phrases like, demands to see Earth's leader, threatens with ancient alien weapons, claims superior intelligence while being outsmarted by houseplants, and says humans are primitive but somehow needs 3 days to defeat them. People checked off squares as they remembered parts of Admiral Kaivel's speeches and actions over the past 3 days. Winners received prizes like coffee mugs that said, "I survived the lamest alien invasion ever," and t-shirts with Admiral Kaivel's face next to the words, "Universe's most disappointed tourist." In Seoul's busy Gangnam district, a young coffee shop worker named Cho Eun-ji had created a special drink for the day. She served Alien Tears Latte to customers who were watching the countdown on television screens around the coffee shop. The drink was blue and sparkled with edible glitter, and she had drawn a sad alien face in the foam on top. "One Alien Tears Latte for table 6, she announced cheerfully, carrying the drink to a group of college students who were laughing and making bets about what would happen when the deadline passed. Outside on the street, a street performer named Lee Min-jae had gathered a large crowd of people who were watching his special performance. He called his dance Death Ray Malfunction, and it involved him pretending to be a powerful alien weapon that kept breaking down at the worst possible moments. Lee Min-jae would pose dramatically, point his arms at the sky like he was charging a dangerous weapon, make dramatic sound effects with his mouth, and then suddenly his weapon would make a sad little poof sound and he would fall over backward, looking confused and embarrassed. The crowd laughed and clapped, and many people gave him money for entertaining them during such a strange day. High above the Earth, aboard the massive Thraxi flagship, Admiral Kaivel stood in front of the weapon control panel. His 4 gray arms were positioned over the buttons and switches that could destroy entire cities in seconds. The weapons were fully charged and ready to fire. He could turn Earth into a dead, burning rock in less than 10 minutes if he wanted to. Behind him, his crew waited in what should have been perfect military silence. But something was wrong. Instead of the disciplined quiet he was used to, Kaivel could hear strange little sounds coming from his soldiers. There were small squeaking noises, quick intakes of breath, and what sounded like people trying very hard not to make noise. The truth was that the Thraxi crew was trying desperately not to laugh. Over the past 3 days, they had been secretly watching human videos and learning about something called humor. Now, at this most serious moment in their military careers, they could not stop thinking about funny human jokes and silly videos. Commander Ralnan approached his superior officer very slowly. In his hand, hidden behind his back, he held a small communication device that was playing a video of a human comedian doing a perfect impression of Admiral Kaivel's surrender speech, complete with fake 4 arms made from pool noodles and a serious expression that looked exactly like the real Admiral. "Admiral?" Ralnan said softly, "What are your orders, sir?" Admiral Kaivel stared at the weapon controls. His glowing blue eyes reflected the blinking lights of the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. For 300 years he had conquered worlds with these same weapons. No species had ever resisted the Thraxi Empire successfully. But as he stood there ready to destroy Earth, Admiral Kaivel found himself thinking about something that had never happened to him before. He was thinking about a video he had watched earlier that morning, where a small human child had drawn a picture of him slipping on a banana peel and falling down with stars spinning around his head. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kaivel hesitated. His 4 arms trembled slightly as he realized something that shocked him. How do you conquer a species that refuses to be afraid of you? How do you intimidate people who respond to your most terrifying threats by making jokes and funny songs? Every other species in the galaxy had begged for mercy when they saw Thraxi power. They had cried, they had offered tribute, they had surrendered their freedom to save their lives. But humans had done something completely different. They had laughed. Admiral Kaivel stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only a few minutes. Around him, his crew waited to see what he would decide. The silence stretched on, broken only by the occasional barely contained snicker from a soldier who was remembering a particularly funny human video. Finally, Admiral Kaivel stepped back from the weapon controls. He turned to face his crew and for the first time in centuries, his voice did not sound completely confident. "This planet," he announced to his surprised officers, "is too primitive for our attention. Their level of civilization is so low that conquering them would bring no honor to the Thraxi Empire. We withdraw immediately." The crew stared at him in shock, but they quickly moved to carry out his orders. Within minutes, the massive alien ship was powering up its engines and preparing to leave Earth's orbit. As the Thraxi fleet disappeared into space as suddenly as it had arrived, people on Earth looked up at the sky and realized something wonderful. They had won. Not with weapons or armies or technology, but with something much more powerful than any of those things. They had won with laughter. 6 months later, Earth became the host of the first intergalactic comedy festival. Alien species from across the galaxy came to visit the small blue planet that had taught them all an important lesson about the power of humor. Many of these aliens were free for the first time in centuries, no longer afraid of the Thraxi Empire that had once seemed so terrifying. There were rumors that Admiral Kaivel himself attended the festival, disguised so that no one would recognize him. His ship's medical officer had reported that the Admiral had developed what could only be described as an addiction to human humor and spent hours each day watching Earth's comedy shows. Humanity had discovered the most important truth in the universe. Sometimes the most powerful weapon against those who demand to be feared is simply refusing to take them seriously.